In continuation to the previous lecture, today we will study phosphorus cycle. Plants consume nitrogen and phosphorus through fertilizers from the soil, which on reaction with glucose forms proteins and other useful organic products. Bacteria and fungi also act upon dead matters to release phosphates and phosphoric acid. Phosphates are also released through urine of animals into the soil, which are utilized by plants in the formation of proteins. Phosphates are also found in rocks, and from these sources they pass into freshwater ecosystems and terrestrial ecosystems. In mineral cycle, phosphates is transferred to consumers and decomposers as organic phosphate and thus become available for recycling. In photosynthetic zone, this phosphorus is consumed by phytoplankton, thus zooplankton play a key role in phosphorus cycle. Phosphorus is essential for life as it is involved in the metabolic process of energy transfer and in encoding information in the genes. Minerals become available to organisms after they are released from rocks. This is the phosphorus cycle. Two mineral cycles of particular significance to organism are phosphorus and sulfur. The phosphorus cycle begins with phosphorus compounds leached from rocks and minerals over long period of time. Because phosphorus has no atmospheric form, it is usually transported in water. Producer organisms take inorganic phosphorus, incorporate it into organic molecules, and then pass it on to consumers. Phosphorus returns to the environment by decomposition. An important aspect of the phosphorus cycle is the very long time it takes for phosphorus atoms to pass through it. Deep ocean sediments are significant phosphorus sinks of extreme longevity. Phosphates or ores that now are mined to make detergents and inorganic fertilizers represent exposed ocean sediments that are millennia old. You could think of our present use of phosphate, which are washed out into the river system and eventually the ocean, as an accelerated mobilization of phosphorus from the source of sink. Aquatic ecosystems often are dramatically affected in the process because excess phosphates can stimulate explosive growth of algae and photosynthetic bacteria populations, upsetting ecosystem stability. Sulfur cycle. Sulfur plays a vital role in organism, especially as a minor but essential component of proteins. Sulfur compounds are important determinants of the acidity of rainfall, surface water, and soil. In addition, sulfur in particles and tiny airborne droplets may act as a critical regulators of global climate. Most of the Earth's sulfur is tied up underground in rocks and minerals such as iron disulfide or calcium sulfate. Weathering emission from deep seafloor vents and volcanic eruptions release the inorganic sulfur into the air and water. This is the sulfur cycle. The sulfur cycle is complicated by the large number of oxidation states the elements can assume, producing hydrogen sulfide, sulfur dioxide, sulfate ion. Inorganic processes are responsible for many of these transformations, but living organisms, especially bacteria, also sulfur in biogenic deposit or release it into the environment. Which of the several kinds of sulfur bacteria prevails in any given situation depends on oxygen concentration, pH, and light levels. Human activities also release large quantity of sulfur primarily through burning fossil fuels. Total yearly anthropogenic sulfur emissions reveal those of natural processes and acid rain caused by sulfuric acid produced as a result of fossil fuel use is a serious problem in many years. Sulfur dioxide and sulfate aerosols cause human health problems, damage building and vegetation, and reduce visibility. They also absorb ultraviolet radiation and create cloud cover that cools cities and may be offsetting greenhouse effects of rising carbon dioxide concentrations. Interestingly, the biogenic sulfur emission of oceanic phytoplankton may play a role in global climate regulation. When dimethyl sulfide, which is oxidized to sulfur dioxide and then sulfate in the atmosphere, acting as a cloud droplets condensation nuclei, these sulfate aerosols increase the Earth's albedo and cool the Earth. And ocean temperature drop because less sunlight gets through, phytoplankton activity decreases, dimethyl sulfide production falls and cloud disappear. Thus, dimethyl sulfide, which may account for half of the biogenic sulfur emissions, could be a feedback mechanism that keeps temperature within a suitable range for all life. Oxygen cycle. As we know that 21% oxygen is present in the atmosphere. It is also present in dissolved water in ponds, lakes, rivers, ocean. Animals utilize this oxygen in respiration and return to atmosphere and water in form of carbon dioxide. This carbon dioxide is taken up by plants during daytime for photosynthesis to form carbohydrates. The cycle of oxygen is maintained in the ecosystem. This is the example of carbon or oxygen cycle. Bioredistribution of elements. We know that each ecosystem has two fundamental properties. First is flow of energy and second is cycling of materials. Both of these are carried through food chains. There are about 33 to 40 elements which plants and animals require for their growth and development. These elements are generally called biogenic salts and are two types, macronutrients and micronutrients. The macronutrients are required in large quantity by plants and animals. They are oxygen, nitrogen, carbon, phosphorus, calcium, magnesium, potassium. The micronutrients such as boron, cobalt, strontium, zinc, copper, molybdenum are very essential for animals and plants but needed in a trace or very small quantities. Their movement in cyclic 1. These biogenic salts flow from non-living to living and back to the non-living in almost circular path and hence called biogeochemical cycle. Bio for living, geo for rocks, soil and chemical for the chemical reactions involved. As a matter of fact, different biological being, that is plants and animals body, are composed of mainly organic compounds and some metallic salts. Out of these compounds, important ones are water, carbohydrate, protein, fat, vitamins, hormones, enzymes, and some inorganic salts. The principal elements composing these compounds are carbon, hydrogen, oxygen, nitrogen, and phosphorus. In addition to the bulk elements of body: sodium, potassium, calcium, and magnesium. The trace elements copper, cobalt, iron, zinc, manganese, and molybdenum are necessary for healthy activity of various enzymes in our body.